Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Pretti-Frontczak, and this is the second in a two-part series on leadership. The first part, we talked all about emotional intelligence and why that's important to getting to a change in practice. And in this recording, I wanted to talk a little bit about what to do during a staff meeting when a staff member or maybe the supervisor is riding the red train. But we'll come back to that in just a minute about what's the red train. But I wanted to use circle time as the context for which we can leverage what we know about effective circle time with young children and use that same mentality as we think about effective staff meeting with adults. So let's return to this idea that a staff member or maybe the supervisor is conducting a staff meeting and somebody's riding the red train. In fact, maybe somebody's riding the blue train too. So let's talk a little bit about what those colors are. I'm going to put different visuals up. So some of you are familiar with this work that I do with my colleague Barb Avila that we call Teach Before the Peak of the Storm. And what these colors mean, it gets a little bit confusing because I also draw upon the work of Stuart Shanker often, and he talks about the blue brain as being the upstairs brain and the brown brain and the red brain. There's also zones of regulation, so you might see things about yellow and purple, but this is really meant to talk about emotional regulation states, arousal states. And so when we have flipped our lids and we are no longer we're really operating from a reactive or a non-conscious place, we are often what we will call in our brainstem or our reptilian brain, and we'll refer to that space in our brain as the red train or the blue train. And the red means I'm in fight or flight, and the blue means I'm in freeze or faint. So the red is hyper aroused, and the blue is hypo aroused. And so what we're really trying to think about is when anyone of any age comes into an interaction or a situation, is noticing which train they might be riding. Sometimes when people are in the red or the blue, they're not able to notice themselves that they have jumped the tracks and they're no longer in the green zone, which we think of as this place where learning can transpire, where development happens, where neurons fire and wire together in a way that is productive and allows the brain to be differentiated as well as linked. So if we go to a staff meeting and let's just say that we are the leader, I want you, though, to remember this could be the reverse. You could be a staff member coming in and your leader's on the red or the blue. So it's just a little hard for me to go back and forth with the examples. So for this scenario, we're going to talk about we're the leader and one of our staff members joins our meeting, virtually, of course, riding the red train or the blue train. And so what do we do about that? And so in that moment, we sort of have a decision to make. So I'll often talk about that we have two jobs. We can be the leader who's got the content and the meeting to get through and all of the content to cover. But we also need to think of ourselves as possibly as a boat captain. And a boat captain is one who recognizes that someone has jumped overboard, fallen overboard. I'm using lots of analogies, but they're no longer in that green zone of optimal learning. And instead, they are in the red or the blue. So what does that really mean? That means that at that juncture, we have a decision. Either I can carry on with the content, the agenda as planned, and just ignore the red or the blue train, or I can jump tracks myself. I can get into the red or the blue, or I can think of myself in that moment as a boat captain, and my job is to offer a lifeline to help that person back into the green zone. Now, this might sound lovely, or it might not sound good at all. This is a little bit of a problem at this juncture because if you're in a staff meeting, there's rarely just one other adult. So this is where we have to really think about what do we know about group management, group dynamics, group kind of flow and relationships. So how do we really think about being a boat captain for more than one person? So I want you to really think about any advice that you've ever given to teachers or paraprofessionals or therapists around circle time or a whole group activity with young children? What are the things that you have shared with them that have helped them sort of navigate all these different temperaments and personalities? Because just like with children that come to circle time, some may be in the red, some may be in the blue, some may be in the green. That's the same thing as our staff meeting. We don't just have one person, but let's just play it through as if only one person is outside of the green zone. Because to be quite honest, when I start thinking about everybody being in a different zone and them moving and changing and needing different lifelines at different days for different reasons, I sort of flip my lid and I can easily hear that shark music, which starts to make me go, I have no idea what to do. And I should mention really quickly too, that if you want any of the resources that I'm sort of talking broadly about, you can go to my blog and type in any of the keywords. So if I just use something like shark music, or here in a minute we talk about coaching with compassion, or triggering the positive emotional attractor, or any of this good stuff, make sure you go to christypf.com /blog, and you can get more of my posts and more riffs like this that will tell you about what to do and how to support adult learners. So I'm also looking at my notes a little bit. So let's say you've decided, okay, I can be the boat captain. In that instance, our job is really to offer a lifeline. So how do we offer lifelines to adults? And so I have a whole blog on different lifelines. And so you can just go over to that URL. I'll pull it up again, and you can say, okay, lifelines, boat captain, and you will see pretty quickly different posts that have to do with this topic. So as we think about being the boat captain, part of that is going to require some level of reframing. So we're going to pull a little bit from Stuart Shanker's work for a minute. And we're going to talk about stressors. And so not just your run-of-the-mill every day, I'm stressed, I have a lot of paperwork, I have a lot of Zoom meetings, I have a lot of things to think about in terms of what is education going to look like in the future. Yes, all of those are stressors, and they will impact all of us differently. And so what we need to do to begin to reframe and see this human who has non-consciously gone to the red or the blue is that we need to see this reaction, whatever we're getting, that hyperarousal or that hypoarousal, as stress behavior instead of misbehavior. That means we need to be a stress detective and really begin to wonder and understand what are the stressors this other human might be experiencing. And Stuart Shanker talks about 5 different domains: biological, emotional, cognitive, social, and pro-social. And it's really interesting, but if you look at the pro-social stressors right now, almost all of those are impacting all humans globally because of the pandemic at the time of this recording. So we really want to think about and be aware, how can I see this person, as Laura Fish would invite us to see the adult behind the behavior, and really see this as stress behavior, not misbehavior. Then we want to really think about, how can I redirect the flow of energy? How can I help this person self-regulate? And so we talk a lot about self-regulation with children and self-regulation at circle time. And this is really that managing all those tensions and energies that the human is experiencing. So how do I help them really think about where their energy is and how it might be sort of contagious? And so this might not be something I can do in the moment, but at some point I need to really talk with this person about how our emotions are contagious and how can they bring an energy that is more neutral or more productive for everyone during staff meetings. But that also means being aware of your own emotions. How can you make sure that however you're responding to this human who is in the red or the blue zone with compassion, so that your energy, that you can help others reach a state of calm, or know that this is a safe harbor, even if somebody has jumped into the red or the blue, that it's okay. The boat captain is here. The boat captain is able to keep driving the ship for all of those who are ready for the meeting, as well as start to bring calm and safety to the person who's overboard. So hopefully all these different analogies are making some sense. The next thing we can do as we're really thinking about co-regulation is helping rewire. Many times people will come to a meeting because they have predetermined ideas. Every time they come to the meeting, this is what happens. Every time they come to the meeting, they're not heard or valued, or whatever it is that is causing them to feel like they need to be in the red or the blue in order to feel kind of like calm. And which is weird because you think calm would be the green, but sometimes we have wired our brains to think that what is normal or typical or predictable is actually hyper or hypo aroused. And so anything outside of that makes us actually feel uncomfortable. So it's this really relearning and reframing for ourselves as the person in the red or the blue, that maybe green is a safe place to be, that green is a place where I will be valued. And so I have a whole series that I've been working on in terms of helping adults feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. Did I say them all? Safe, seen, soothed, and secure. And so again, you might want to check out the blog. Let's put up that URL again, where you can check out my Stress Detective series on how to help other adults feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. And so this notion of feeling safe is, have I as the leader created a safe harbor in this meeting, whether it's virtual or physical? Have I done things to allow people to know that they are valued, that they will be safe, that there will not be this judgment or intimidation? So this is really on me as a leader to make sure that I am creating a safe meeting space. And again, you'll want to check out that blog on what it means to experience safe and what makes humans feel unsafe, and then what you can do in terms of practical ways to create that safety. And really that's this notion of co-regulation, this space between humans where they feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. Okay, so that brings us to a little visual here that might help a bit as well. So as we are thinking about as a leader during this meeting, and or if we think back to circle time, how are we helping teachers create group environments where children feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure? And so really we're thinking to ourselves, what am I doing during the staff meeting that protects my staff from seeing me as a source of threat or fear? If I'm scared and talking about compliance, and if I'm talking to people about uncertainty, and if I'm kind of on the edge myself, this is going to be contagious. This is going to make others feel unsafe. So we may not have all the answers, but if we set a culture and tone that we can be okay with uncertainty, that we can accept that there will be a lack of closure to some parts of our meeting, and that the value is just the conversation that we're having in and of itself, that can help people start to feel more safe. And seen is this idea that people are valued, that their emotions are valued, that they that we have a great deal of empathy for how they may be feeling in a particular set of circumstances. So what we really want to do is before, during, and after this meeting is always ensuring that staff feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. Again, you can go to my blog and get lots and lots of more examples. Not sure what my grammar is all about. Okay, so let's talk about the last part, which is this idea of what are some other practical ways that I can help keep people in the green or invite them back into the green. So if I'm the boat captain and I'm going to offer a lifeline, how do I do that in a way that sort of extends the green zone, allows the green zone to be a place that they want to be, or that they can feel like again, that's a safe harbor. It's a safe place to be. Okay, so if we're going to extend the green zone, there are going to be two things we're going to talk about pretty quickly. One is we're going to trigger the positive emotional attractor. So if you are, again, are on my blog, let's see if we can pull that up for you. You want to think about, what am I doing or saying that triggers what we call the positive emotional attractor. So the PEA, or positive emotional attractor, is not something that oftentimes comes natural to humans. In fact, the research shows that we tend to easily have the NEA, the negative emotional attractor, triggered more readily and more often than the positive emotional attractor. So what can we do to trigger the PEA? So I wanted to take a couple of notes because my colleague Jennifer Lopez has several blogs about coaching with compassion and how to help get adults to change their behavior, and where we talk about triggering the positive emotional attractor. But let me give you 4 ideas really quickly. One, if we discuss with our staff, their vision for the future, and if we do that in a way that invites them into thinking about what is the most ideal vision we could have. So instead of feeling like we have to have the answer of what the future will look like, we invite people to sort of dream for a minute, to really think about what would be the most ideal situation? If everything went well, what would be in place? How did that feel? Or when we've had great success in the past, what did that look and feel like? And how can we leverage some of what we already know about being effective with families and children to be effective in new ways that we may have to engage with them? Second thing is, we always work from a place of compassion. That's what we've already been hinting at, that we notice that somebody has an unmet need, and that we're able to validate and process that big emotion with them and give them some assurance, affirm in some way that we will help get that need met. And that's really what we're talking about, working from a place of compassion, is noticing that someone has a need and then taking action to meet that need. The third thing I wanted to share with you is that we really want to build upon that staff member's strengths, perhaps that they're writing the red or the blue because we haven't really leveraged or tapped into their strengths. So we want to find a way to reframe what might annoy us about them, just like we do with children. So this was a really good one. A teacher was saying in a blog, I saw a child who went into the blue zone and they were hiding under the table. And her reframe was understanding that she saw that as a child who was hiding, and really it was a child who had found calm. So we might have a staff member that's presenting red or blue behaviors that are really annoying or feel disruptive to the meeting. But if we can look at them with compassion and think about reframing that as a strength. So they talk a lot. Maybe they have a lot of ideas that can contribute. Maybe they are our yeah, but person. But maybe they're our word of caution that can allow us to look for things that we may have, we're an oversight in our rush to take action. Or maybe they're the person who's always quoting what the union will say. Well, they have a lot of technical knowledge about policy. How can we reframe how we see them so that we can leverage that strength and really build it into our staff meeting? And then the fourth thing that we want to do is really inspire a sense of hope. Not only that we're thinking about compassion and gratitude, but we really want to work from a place of hope. And that doesn't mean that we're being Pollyanna. That doesn't mean that we're just ignoring the challenges that are in front of us, but we're really thinking about, how do I approach things from a place of hope? And then that will leave us with one last thing, which is sort of the long-term work. And the long-term work is really building the emotional intelligence of our staff. So we started this off with, how do I approach or deal with a staff member who comes to a meeting riding the red or the blue train? And we talked about, okay, noticing that they're on the red or the blue is a beautiful place to begin. But this is not always the time to build their emotional intelligence. This is sort of the preventive work. And so if I notice that somebody is in the red or the blue, that's great. At least I am noticing and I'm aware, and I can begin to say, my job has changed from being the leader and the coordinator of this meeting to really offering a lifeline. I'm a boat captain in that moment. So what can I do to offer a lifeline so that person's able to come back into the green? And that might take more than one try. that might take us reframing and really first seeing it as stress behavior than misbehavior, because I don't really like rescuing somebody who's super annoying. I also might need to really think about emotions are contagious, and what am I doing to help others feel differently about the meeting. And I might really need to co-regulate, that I might really need to help regulate them so that they can actually come back into the green with my assistance. And so I'm going to do that as I think about all of these, amazing in-depth things that we've been talking about. But we also want to be able to keep in mind the safe, seen, soothed, and secure. These are all things we can do on the fly. These are things we can do in the moment. Now, you may need to make notes of them and be prepared, because different people will need different lifelines, because stressors are impacting different people in different ways. And then as we think about our long game, we really want to think about, how am I not only doing things that trigger the positive emotional attractor, but how am I building their emotional intelligence? So if that is new to you, you might want to go back to part 1 of this leadership and think about what we mean by emotional intelligence, and how do I build that in my staff. And then once we've got this sort of idea of how do I do this with one person, we can start to think about, okay, when I have a staff meeting, it's not just one person. How do I do this in a dance kind of way, where I have multiple partners in my dance? And so I might have 3 in the green and are ready for the meeting. I have 1 in the red, 1 in the blue. Then the 3 that were in the green go into the red, because the red train loves company. I'm throwing lifelines. I'm trying to cover the content. This is a lot, right? So we really need to think about this sort of in stages. And the best way that I can sort of think about it is, what are my tips and ideas for staying and keeping the most number of people in the green? What am I doing to widen that window of tolerance? What am I doing to help people know that they are safe, seen, soothed, and secure, so that they can notice their own escalation or de-escalation, and they can put their own limbic brakes on, so that it's not me having to do this with everyone. So when you start thinking and getting overwhelmed about, there's so many of these beautiful humans, I can't co-regulate them all. Well, that's why we think about, how do I build their emotional intelligence so they can notice their own needs and apply their own coping strategies, so that they can come back into the green as well, so that it doesn't rely just on me and just on my ability to stay in the green and bring everyone else with me. So hopefully that gives you much to think about in terms of, are you before the peak? Are you overboard? Am I trying to bring you back in? Is this a long-term investment? And so any of the things I mentioned today, from triggering the positive emotional attractor, to coaching with compassion, to this notion of being a stress detective as a leader, all of that, you can find many, many blog posts and recordings and training videos on my blog. So be sure to just go there and then type in the keyword that you're interested in, or you can just reach out to me and I'll help you find what you're looking for. So hopefully this helps.